Giles Brown.
Let's talk.
Afghanistan Sniper, trauma on the front line and beyond. The war in Afghanistan had grown to its most violent of times, and the Helmand province had made for some of the bloodiest battles. With their departure to the front lines fast approaching, a Welsh infantry battalion was in the process of selecting their very best men to be put forward for sniper training. What follows next is a fascinating, thought-provoking book called Afghanistan Sniper. It's by Ted Shirley. I'm delighted to say that Ted joins me live on the line now. Ted, good morning to you, sir.
Hello, good morning. How are you?
Oh, well, it's another day on the Costa del Sol. It could be, it's better than Birmingham, as the saying goes.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's not exactly warm in North Wales at the minute.
Right. So whereabouts do we? Are you at an undisclosed location? Are you somewhere in the
I
island?
am. Yes.
Super. So we'll call it somewhere near Flint then, or something like that. Let's move swiftly on.
Oh, yeah, that'll do. Yeah,
that'll do. Yeah, if you're going to snipe anywhere, Flint's got to be first on the list. Right then, let's move swiftly onwards though from that. Explain to the listeners a little bit about your career, what led you, because you didn't get sort of dropped fully formed into Afghanistan, thank goodness. What was your first introduction to the military? Why you decided to sign up?
Yeah, so I'd had family members and stuff like that who'd always told me these stories about their time in the military and stuff. My dad was in the Falklands. So from a very young age, I was very keen to sort of get out and see the world and do a bit. So, yeah, my first tour of Afghan was 2008, and then went on then to my second tour in 2009, which is where I was a sniper.
Right, and what regiment were you in, and how old were you?
So I was 21 years old on my second tour. So this tour that the book's about, I was 21. I was with the Royal Welsh Fusiliers. So a hardened bunch of men.
A hardened bunch of men. Did you even know where Afghanistan was before that first sort of tour? Because, obviously a lot of it is, the training is windswept. You're at Oakhampton trying to find out, which particular bit of bog that is. So when you're suddenly dropped into dusty, hot, interesting countryside, it must have been a bit of a culture shock for you, Ted.
Yeah, it was like landing on Mars, to be honest. It was completely foreign. It was the temperature was the first thing that struck me. It was hotter than ever, and I've never been anywhere so hot and so dry. And it was a very difficult environment to work in, especially, on average, we'd be running around with about 6 or 7 stone on our back. So it wasn't an easy time. It was stressful for everybody involved, and acclimatizing was a part of that stress.
And when you're in sort of Helmand, because everybody thinks, it was camp, it was the big American camp, and everybody had hot and cold running, I don't know, McDonald's at every corner. We were watching movies, we were hanging out, having a great time. But if, Helmand, you were basically, it was almost going back to the sort of 19th century. It was a fort situation, wasn't it? You were basically sort of sleeping and fighting and patrolling, and then going back to an area where there was pretty basic, Ted.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, there was there's no windows in any buildings or anything like that. It was sort of it was like going back to ancient times. But yeah, for us in particular, I was part of a thing called a mobile reconnaissance force, which housed a lot of reconnaissance and sniper guys and stuff. And our job was to go out into the middle of the desert, disappear, do strike ops on various Taliban strongholds, and then withdraw back into the desert and become invisible again. After a while, that sort of progressed then to a bigger, wider operation, which was known as Operation Moshtarak. It was the biggest air assault since World War II. It was pretty incredible, to be honest. I talk about it a lot in the book. But from there on, it was kind of take positions, and then we would then live in those positions, fortify them, and keep taking ground and pushing the Taliban back. What
was the thing about becoming a sniper? Because it is a discipline in itself, and I suppose everybody gets that sort of romance of the lone wolf and all that, and everybody's seen the enemy at the gates and Stalingrad and that sort of thing. So why did you want to become a sniper, as it were?
Well, that was it. Yeah, you just hit the nail on the head, to be honest. Enemy behind the gates and films like Sniper and stuff like that. Tom Berenger. It was that idea. I just fell in love with the idea of how sort of creative the job could be, and that side of wanting to be only a few For instance, in our battalion, say there's 1,000 men. There was only 5 of us being snipers on the ground in Afghan out of all those men. So that interested me in it, and it drew me to it.
So when you sort of sign up and do the training or the course, I mean, is it sort of all right, Ted, all right, Shirley, see that tin can over there? You know, have a pop. I mean, how does it work? It's got to be a bit more than that, hasn't it? It's got to be, presumably, it's got to be where the sun is, logistics, ballistics, all that sort of stuff.
Yeah, very much so. So it all starts with a pre-selection phase where you get hundreds, if not thousands of men go for the course. And then those that rise to the top, you get sent away to the Highlands. After that, it's very much classroom-based at first, for like you just said there, the ballistics and how a round flies through the air, how the weapon systems work, and calibrating yourself to the wind and these things. And then after that, it is all day, every day on targets. You're smashing to the point where we would hit at 1,000 yards, we'd hit a 10 pence piece every single time. That's the sort of accuracy that you push towards. And the learning curve's steep, and there's a standard. British Army snipers are held to such a high standard that if you sort of fall behind, you're left behind. That is it. There's no room for error. You either smash it or it's back to your unit. So everyone's working really hard.
Right. So you're constantly at that level. You don't think, right, I've got my sniper thing now, and then I can coast a bit. What was it? Because you don't just go out on you don't think you don't suddenly think, right, I'm going to go off and do a bit of sniping. So do you go out with, explain the mechanic? Because I mean, again, most of us will know this from American Sniper, from Jarhead, for example. Those sort of movies. I mean, do you go out with an observer? I mean, what's the drill?
So typically, yes, you would. Unfortunately for us on our tour, due to things like injuries, casualties, things like that, it ended up that us snipers were actually all working alone, which came with its very big challenges. One being the mental health side of it, especially for me, not being able to decompress with someone that's just seen the same image as me, which was, obviously traumatizing at the time. Becoming a sniper was something that I'd worked so hard to do. But it turned out, the reality of carrying that weight alone, it was a very, very heavy burden to bear, which ensued with a 10-year battle of PTSD for me, which luckily now I've now kicked.
Yeah, I mean, presumably, you, again, and we'll come on to I just want to get this out of the way so we can come on to the redemption bit, right? Because I'm not going to go down that sort of that manly sort of there you are bit. But because presumably you don't just rock up and shoot. You're given a target, and you're not told, just go and have a crack at anybody you see moving. So therefore, you're given a target. You get out there. You wait for hours, for days, sometimes. I mean, keeping position. I mean, that's a strain in itself, surely.
Yeah, there's various roles. So again, back to the sort of sniper training side of thing, that is where you'll hear, everyone talks about this thing where snipers live underground for days on end and wait and watch a target, and then it all pops off. And that's very much the culmination of a 6-month sniper course. It houses everything. But the reality was, on the ground for us, at least for our battalion's snipers, we were very much on the patrols with the guys at first on the ground, and having to then quick react and jump up on roofs and things like that to deal with various situations, which inevitably was exhausting for me, having to carry such a big heavy weapon. Like the 338 sniper rifle that we used was designed originally to be fit in helicopters to take out engine blocks to stop cars. So this is a heavy weapon system.
So what's it firing? What's it firing then?
It's a 338 round. So imagine a 50 caliber round, the bloody big buggers that everyone knows. It's a little bit smaller than one of those. So imagine carrying, a few hundred of those with you, as well as radios and all the other equipment. It becomes relentless. And, carrying this huge weapon system through marketplaces or bazaars, it would become very daunting. I'd have a sidearm, a 9mm pistol on my leg, but it was very much a situation where everyone around me with the close quarter weapons would have to sort of take lead. And I felt extremely uncomfortable, which then progressed to me more or less most of the time staying at our forward operating bases, being on the roof and overwatching the patrols, because I could see, obviously super far.
Yeah, and he kind of marks you out. If you're carrying a bleeding grate rifle, in the middle of patrol, it's like, oh, well, he's the man, he's the man getting it first then.
Yeah, and that's usually how it went, yeah. So bangs and explosions would go off. It'd be my name getting shouted at and then me jumping on a roof with dust. And the same goes for the other snipers, right into direct enemy fire. And we'd be able to tell a lot of the times by our interpreters who would listen to enemy radio transactions that they would be going for us, and they had nicknames and all sorts of things for us where we were very much the target.
What because sniping is, being a sniper, I mean, we'll talk about the glamour and the whole bits and pieces. And, everybody's had a go at Call of Duty, everybody thinks they're going to be a great sniper because it's the cartoon version. But we don't think about it. And thankfully we do now. But when you're in a combat situation, if you're in a combat situation, I obviously haven't been in that situation, but if you're firing off a few rounds on, you're on point, you're on patrol, and you're not spraying because that's the wrong thing. But if you are an infantryman and you are laying down suppressing fire on an enemy position, you don't know where that is going. You kind of get an idea, but you don't know as a sniper, it's a whole different because what the
I'm only firing one round.
Yeah,
very much so. Yeah, so a lot of British troops who've done multiple tours of Afghan never even saw a member of the Taliban. They would just be, like you just said, firing in a general direction of suppressing fire. They might see a quick movement of a shadow or something, whereas for me and the other sniper guys, it was very, very different. We'd almost be able to gauge the personality of the targets, and when it came to things like, as we mentioned, I was 21 years old. When it came to fighting and taking shots against people who were my age, we're not talking, old men or seasoned people. Sometimes it would be, sometimes it would be somebody that had been given a weapon and $50 and said, go and try to see if you can take one of those out, and they're just as dangerous. So it was very hard. And I think the whole doing it on our own as well, that became only I could make the decisions that I was going to, and that it became a real sort of heavy weight to carry.
But you're full of adrenaline. You've got your training. You're breathing. You're doing the job because that is the job you do, and that's ticking all the boxes. But then again, you are a human being, Ted. And you're only 21, and you've got. It's not as if you can go back and see the camp psychiatrist. So you have, drink, overcompensate, whatever you want to do to de-stress from that.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. It would, for me, my sort of initial PTSD began when I was still on the front line. And it was something that I hid really, really well because I'd never really heard of a mental health issue before. I certainly never heard of PTSD before in my life. But I did know that if I opened my mouth, it was probably going to be the end of my career. So there was that side of things. Keep it hidden. Hopefully it'll just sort of go away. But having to do that and then still do the job. And as you just said, being human, when you humanize these things, like we call targets. Well, the reality is it's not a target. It's not a Taliban. It's another guy. And then once I sort of lowered that wall and let that sort of empathy and compassion for the life I was taking in, it was like a floodgate opened. I still had to continue to do the job, but it was almost like I felt into their pain or their fear, because we would see these things. We would see the terror on their faces. There was one day in particular where I ended up taking out 5 insurgents in one area, and the looks on their faces, it was something that stuck with me for a very, very long time. Tormented me, to be honest. But luckily now I've shook it off and I've got my life back. But it's very much a high stakes environment and a very stressful job for sure.
Here's the thing: when you come back, you say you've done your tours, you come back. Did you presumably you got commissioned out? You left of your own free will and accord?
No, I was medically discharged in the end.
Right.
So we came back from that 6-month tour, and instantly I wasn't okay. Instantly I was getting into a lot of fights, getting into a bit of trouble with the law, drinking, as you said, there, coping in whatever way I could, which in the end became ridiculous. I was in a very bad state, drinking far too much and constantly, battered and bruised from It's just
situations, Ted.
Yeah. So yeah, that sort of went on for a few months until I sort of said, right, enough's enough, and I've got to say something, and flagged it up the chain of command, and that sort of started the process then of me seeing psychiatric nurses through the military. But at that time, the help wasn't really there. They were trying their best, but they were learning from pamphlets that were older than I was, and these things just weren't working. They weren't practical tools. And so a few months later, I actually tried to commit suicide and ended up for 3 months in a psychiatric ward, locked up on the other side of the country. And that was torturous. That was. But then a few months after that happened, I was medically discharged from service.
So you get medically discharged, you're back on the street, in the, and it's. I'll phrase this really carefully, Ted. Okay, so
don't worry,
because everybody knows the Afghanistan war is going on, but it's not like the Second World War. It's not like the war our grandfathers fought in, and so therefore there's a detachment, and people will go, "You're a hero," and "God blimey, bless you," and I'll buy you a pint. And they don't know. And life is going on, and people are going on about EastEnders or whatever else, and you're thinking, I've just come from this place, and what I've done. Yeah. And if you're on your own there, and this is why we have so many veterans, from all walks, who can't decompress and find it really difficult and get themselves in real trouble. So how did you handle that without doing A, doing something stupid again in the nicest possible way, or B, ending up either homeless or, at Her Majesty's pleasure, as it were?
Yeah, it was very close. So once I'd sort of left the military, I was then handed over to the NHS. My care was handed over, which is when I first started to really engage in therapy, which to me was it was terrifying. I was a very stiff upper lip British.
That's what the Americans do, isn't it? Americans do therapy, for goodness sake.
Exactly, yeah. That's for the Americans, not us. However, I couldn't disagree more now. So my therapist, Doug, we worked together for a few months, and I got to a place where I was feeling okay. I didn't not want to wake up the next day. And to me, at that point, that was great. That's how bad things had been. And I then decided that it was time to get completely out of my comfort zone. And I went travelling around the world for a few years. I witnessed as many things as possible, from like jungles and Mayan ruins and all these sorts of things. It was an incredible few years, and it taught me to sort of become a person again and drop the identity of a sniper and actually have my identity back. And then once I returned to the UK, my symptoms came back massively, tenfold, in fact, which then led me to getting back in touch with the NHS team that previously helped me, but it was a 12-month waiting list. So I thought, how am I going to survive the next 12 months? Which was a genuine question. It was quite a terrifying thought. But I leaned into what I'd learned while away. Obviously, while travelling, I'd met a lot of hippie type people, which introduced me to a lot of things. One of them being cannabis. Number 2 being magic mushrooms, psilocybin. So I started to microdose these too. And then there was a third called dimethylate tryptamine. Between these 3 things, they changed my world. They allowed me, they weren't a fix, they were a crutch that allowed me to get through 12 months and fully engage in therapy to the point where it didn't become overwhelming and I gave up like I did the first time. So it was very much a spirituality, mindfulness approach that I took to get through it, and the support of my wife, which was second to none. It was needed. Love was very much needed in my life.
Top. I mean, I'm doffing my cap to your other half in that case, because it can be a nightmare for partners. Anybody who's going through, a traumatic situation. It can be drugs, it can be drink, it can be any addiction or any trauma that obviously you're going through. Because a lot of people just go, well, I didn't sign up for this. I signed up for the guy in the uniform, and the gleaming smile, and will you take that dream catcher down, that sort of thing,
Yeah, that's it. Absolutely, yeah. It was turned out I was a pain in the arse. Oops.
Well, we all are. Listen, you've just mentioned 3 illegal drugs, so I'll get you away with the word arse. Put it that way. It's dead. Listen, so you did, you've got to your therapy, you've done your bit, you've done your therapy. It's the thing about it. It's hard work, isn't it? I mean, it really, they say to write stuff down. It sounds dead easy. And then you go, oh, for goodness sake. And you really do open a door and all these little bits and pieces come out that you really don't want to come out again.
Yeah, it was fantastic, to be honest. It was really fascinating. I started off with a thing called CBT, cognitive behavioural therapy, which sort of addressed my behaviours and thought processes, because my anger ruled my world. It was the slightest look or what I thought was a wrong look from someone would set me off, and I had no control over it. I constantly felt like I was in danger, and the majority of the time I just felt really sad. So that sort of combated that side of things, and then we progressed then onto a thing called EMDR, which is eye movement desensitization and reprogramming. So really quickly, when we're asleep, we go into REM sleep, yeah?
Yeah.
So when we're in REM sleep, our eyes are moving from left to right, and what they're doing is processing information, sending it to the back of the brain. Well, EMDR sort of imitates that. And I'd sit with a therapist in front of me and watch a light bar go from left to right, right to left, almost like a sort of hypnotism sort of thing. And I'd talk about these events, or I'd sit there and think about them, and random things would pop up. And it was strange to see like memories of being a child, certain things, Christmas dinners, family members that had passed away, all these things, all these sort of like upsetting things as a child would be attached to this thing. And eventually, as the weeks went by, they all cleared, and with it, the emotions that I attached to the traumatic memories of Afghanistan and pulling the trigger and the things that I'd seen, they disappeared with it. And now I'm at a point where I can think about these things and obviously talk about these things in as much detail as possible with no effect.
Because that's the thing. I mean, you've written this book, and for a lot of people, that would bring up those triggers again, pardon the pun, but because you're writing it down for other people to look at, and and you've got to readdress that. And you said, it's not just, sometimes it's not just with one person; it's 5 different people. And for a normie, that would be enough to send them straight back down to point one.
Yeah, very much so. It was a test. It was a test that I'd wanted to write this book for years and years. I'd wanted to write it because when I was suffering, I was searching for something like this, and I couldn't find it. I didn't know anyone had spoke about these sort of things openly or in as much detail. So that's kind of the reason that I did it, because I truly do believe that people struggling, if they were to read the book, it will give context and it will give them a better perspective on how you can change these things. Because for me, it was constantly at the forefront of my mind. And so I was constantly pushing it away. And in turn, that just made it become my life. Every waking moment of my life was about PTSD. So because I didn't know what to do. Writing this was very much a challenge to start. But once I'd started, you couldn't, honestly, you could not take the smile off my face. One, because I was doing it. I was writing this book about this stuff that very, very nearly killed me. But I was doing it and enjoying it. It was getting out, and it was a massive confirmation that these demons are gone. I no longer have these demons. This is a story now that feels like a lifetime ago. But there's people that I know, and people obviously, struggling from things like that happened in Iraq and Afghanistan, that I really, really do believe it will help them. It will. I know it will, because it gives context. It's almost like a fly on the wall in a therapy session. And it shows you what it's about.
And I suppose rather than, the aforementioned American going, well, if you've been in combat, then you'll be feeling like this. But, you have been there. And so for anybody who has been in the same situation, it's not a fluffy, look at my aura sort of thing. It's like, well, this is how it was. This is it was before. And I understand that, but you don't have to go and, get in bar fights in the mumbles every Saturday afternoon.
Absolutely not. No, you don't. No. In fact, it makes things worse. It absolutely makes things worse. The only thing I tried to find when I was struggling was happiness. I was in a constant pursuit of happiness because it was the ultimate goal. And the more I stopped trying towards the end, the better things got. It really did. And I just sort of let let life take over, which is what, things like the psilocybin and stuff like that really helped with that. Let's just sort of lower this constant anxiety and anger that I was living through.
So you've got,
because that's what kept me alive.
Because now you've got this book out and you're sitting there and you're doing interviews all over the place, press tour, etc., etc. I mean, you must look back at that and go, blimey, how on earth did us, what life just doesn't always surprise you. You never know what's coming out, but I'm glad I'm still here for the ride.
Absolutely. I am so grateful every day. I'm just so grateful. Without being too morbid, I didn't want to wake up. Every day, I did not want to wake up. I was so sad, and now I'm just so happy. I've managed to get this book out, which I can't stop holding. I've only just received copies in my hand a couple of days ago, and it's just blowing my mind. I've got the celebrities, and I'm getting interviewed by podcasters, and I'm getting, millions of views on things, and it's just insane, and it's just really humbling. And what's incredible is tomorrow I get to go to Cardiff Castle to meet with my old therapist and his entire team and give a talk, give a presentation on what worked, what didn't work, and how we can go about helping people in the future as well.
The book is called Afghanistan Sniper, Trauma on the Front Line and Beyond. It's by Ted Shirley. Listeners, go onto the Talk Radio Europe website, click on the book. It will be winging its way to you all the way to Spain. Ted, if people want to find you on the socials or the web, where's the best place to find you?
Yes, find me on Instagram at Ted Shirley Author. Same on TikTok, same Facebook. Ted Shirley or Ted Shirley Author, you'll find me for sure. Or a Google search. No problem at all. Well, listen, Ted, it's been absolutely outstanding. Congratulations on the book. It's been an absolute honour to speak to you today. Ted Shirley, thank you so much for your time today. Thank you. Have a great day, Giles. Cheers.